Hey everybody, and welcome back to my top 100 board games of all time. This is the 2022 into 2023 edition of the list, and we finally made it to the pinnacle with the top 10 games here. So these are my absolute favourite, the best of the best, but please do not dismiss the other 90 games that I've talked about in this series, because I love each of them and it's definitely worth checking those videos out. Now before I get started on the games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer when it comes to purchasing board games here in the UK. And if you use my link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. But without further ado, let's get on with the list. At number 10, I have Brass Birmingham. So this was actually ranked at number 15 last year. So my love for this one has continued to grow despite me being absolutely terrible at the game. But this is a pretty involved and heavyweight economic style game, as you are managing this hand of cards in order to establish this network of railways and build buildings on the map. But when you build these buildings, you have to be careful, because you have to be able to chain these buildings to these relevant areas on the edge of the map in order to flip them over and start generating points. But you can also build buildings which will come hand in hand with resources, which are a shared commodity in the game. So if you build something and put resources on them, then those resources can be used by other players. Now that's obviously great for them because they can use them to build stuff for themselves, but it can be good for you because it will let you flip that building over sooner and again start generating you points. So I love the way that works, that shared economy, that flow of resources, a very interesting and dynamic game. I love the way the game somewhat tunnel visions you in what you can do by only giving you a restrictive hand of cards. So you're not overwhelmed with options, but you do have enough and you want to be playing them as optimally as you can. Just an absolute masterpiece of a design. I absolutely love it. That is Brass Birmingham at number 10. At number 9, I have a huge climber with Chinatown. So this was actually ranked at number 34 last year, so it has really become one of my favourite games ever. Now this is a very boisterous negotiation style game where you are trying to get as much money as you can by any means necessary, really. So in this game you have a bunch of cards, you are going to draft some of them, you're going to discard some of them, and that is all going to relate to a different reference on the map. So they're all supposed to represent these different kind of shop units, I suppose. And you're going to show that those buildings now belong to you. And then from then on, you are going to be drawing these shop units from this bag, which are these tiles, and then you can potentially place them onto the map in order to generate income. But the more of the same shop you get close to each other, the more income they're going to generate in this kind of sliding scale mechanism. But what I love about this game is that everything is up for trade. You can trade the units, you can trade who owns the shops, you can trade money, of course, and it's all about trying to strike the optimal deal and trying to speculate on what could be worth money in the future. When is it worth holding onto these buildings? When is it worth selling them? When is it going to be worth the most to you? Is it going to be worth good for you because it can increase your footprint in your restaurant? Or is that spot going to be worth a fortune for your opponent because it's the final piece of the puzzle they need and there's no other real estate around it? Therefore, you really do have the leverage and can get a lot of money from them. So I love the way this works. It is such a dynamic game, so much freedom. The rules overhead is very low, so definitely easy to teach, and all of the fun, all of the excitement is player driven, and that you can be so creative with the deals you can strike up here. It is a masterpiece and I just love it, and it continues to go from strength to strength, and climbing this many places is certainly impressive considering how many games I play each year. So that is Chinatown at number 9. At number 8, I have another climber with Keyflower. So Keyflower was ranked, at number 16 last year, but again, climbed 8 places. Very impressive. So this is a bidding and worker placement hybrid with a little bit of tile placement as well. So it definitely has a bunch of mechanisms going on here, but another game that flows wonderfully smoothly. Definitely no bloat or any confusion when it comes to the rules. And I love the economy in this game, as the economy is actually your pieces or your workers that you're using to claim these tiles and utilize these tiles. So what you're going to do each round is you're going to have a bunch of these tiles up for auction. And behind your screen, you're going to have a bunch of different meeples of different colours. Now you're going to use those meeples either to activate the buildings you've already collected, or even activate other people's buildings, or activate buildings up for auction this round. Or you can use those meeples in order to try and bid for those tiles in order to acquire them to your own personal map. And I love the fact that these meeples come in different colours, so they are coded. But as soon as one of these meeples is assigned to a tile, that is going to be locked in for the remainder of the round. So if I have loads of blue meeples, you have none, I can really use that to my advantage because I know that you cannot compete with me when it comes to using blue meeples. And I also love this kind of pick up, deliver and shifting resources thing going on here as you're trying to establish resources or gain resources, but then drag them around your map and then deposit them on certain other tiles in order to upgrade them to become more powerful. And I also love the fact that when you use other players' tiles, they are going to be able to use those meeples that you've bid with in the future rounds against you. So again, another dynamic game, such a free-flowing design here, and it is just genius. And yeah, I love this one. Every game feels different, every game feels fun, and it's just so good. That is Keyflower at number 8. At number 7, I have last year's number 9 with Concordia. So for me, Concordia is one of the most elegant and most objectively well-designed games that I've ever played. There really is no margin for improvement with this one, in my opinion. So this is a card-driven Euro, as of course you have this hand of cards, and on your turn, all you're going to do is play one of those cards and take the associated action. Now these actions are all going to be very simple, such as moving your pieces around the board and potentially getting presents or setting up these trade posts in these cities. You are going to be able to trade goods or buy them and sell them. You can acquire new cards from the card row to obviously take more actions, but each of these cards also associates to a scoring criteria. So they're all associated to these different gods, which might be things like, for each different region you're in, you'll get points. For each different type of resource you produce, you get points. For every X amount of money you get points. So you can really pick and choose the cards you want to tailor towards your long-term strategy. And I love the way that works. And the fact this game also has no in-game scoring at all. All the scoring is completely opaque. There is nothing being exposed until the very end. It means you always feel like you're in this one. You don't know what the score is going to be, so there's no kind of room for disengagement or losing interest because you don't know who's doing well, and it always stays exciting until the very end. I love the way you can string these moves together. I love the way you're rewarded by playing through more cards before you pick them up and getting money. For the more cards you play, the more money you get. Just a brilliant design, and I love this kind of level of interaction where everything is abundant here. Yes, you'll do something. It might help other players as well. So there's no nasty interaction here, but there is meaningful interaction because you need to be racing to get these cities established before other players because it's going to get more expensive the longer you wait. Just a fantastic game, almost perfect really. That is Concordia at number 7. At number 6, I have Trismegistus, the ultimate formula. So this is definitely the heaviest game on the top 10 here, and maybe the heaviest, or at least top 2 or 3 heaviest games on the entire top 100. So this is a dice drafting game, but when you're drafting these dice, you are considering 3 different things. You are considering the symbol on that die, the colour of the die, and also how many dice were in the pool to start with, because that is going to be the potency of the actions you take. And considering you only ever get, I think it's like 12 turns in the whole game, every single turn is massively important in this one. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to collect resources, upgrade those resources with the aim of completing these contract cards, or these kind of formula cards, I suppose. But I love the way you can upgrade your player board as you go by placing these kind of tiles down, which will trigger as you shift resources from one spot to another. Or you can flip these tokens down on your player board to create rows and columns to get more engine building benefits. Just so much going on here, and it has this great forward momentum as you're getting more and more powerful as you go. Definitely a brain burner. You want to be making sure you're not wasting any efforts here. You have to very meticulously manage your resources, but if you're willing to put in the effort and get over that maybe initial steep learning curve, the game will pay off massively. It is more than worth the effort it takes to play this one. Love it. That is Trismegistus at number 6. At number 5, I have Praga, Caput, Regni, which was ranked at number 6 last year. So this is a Vladimir Suki design, one of which that didn't really do anything tremendously new, but what it does to an exceptionally high standard. As you are taking these tiles from this action crane mechanism, where the longer you leave things, the better rewards you're going to get, but you may want to do the same action again, which will mean that you're going to maybe even get a punishment if you take it too soon. But what you're trying to do is you are trying to collect resources, you are kind of fortifying your little player area by building these walls. You are upgrading the actions you can take, you're getting new technologies, you're climbing tracks, you're walking down this road and getting benefits as you go. Loads of potential to string actions together here, which is kind of one of the standout points I take away from a lot of Vladimir Suchý designs, is his ability to create those huge domino effects where one thing will trigger another thing, which will trigger another thing, and before you know it, you've had this massive grandiose turn where you've managed to pull off so much, maybe even more than you anticipated. But this game is so easy to teach. I remember not playing this game for quite a while. We just pulled it off the shelf randomly, and within 5 minutes I remembered all the rules and were ready to play. So it's not one of those games that's going to sit stagnant on your shelf and you're going to have to relearn each time you play. And considering the depth and choices that go on here, that for me is a massive triumph. So yeah, I think this game is so well put together. One of the best games that's come out in the last few years. You know, this is only like 2 or 3 years old now, and it's great to see that there's still amazing games coming out. So if you love Euros, this is definitely one to look at because it does everything, you know, Eurofied to an amazing standard. So that is Praga Caput Regni at number 5. At number 4, I have Lorenzo Il Magnifico. Now this was ranked at number 7 last year, and it has been ranked as high as number 3, but I think it's been in the top 10 since I acquired this one many years ago. So this is a worker placement game with a twist, as at the start of each round you are rolling 3 dice of different colours, and everybody is going to have workers associated to the colours of those dice. So let's say I rolled a 5 on the black die, that means everybody's black worker is going to be strength 5. Then you're going to be using those workers to place on worker placement spots in order to acquire cards of different colours. Now these cards are of course going to cost resources, but they are also going to give you either ongoing engine benefits, they're going to give you set collection bonuses and different things like that. And I also love the fact that, you know, while there is some swinginess in the luck of the dice, everybody is singing from the same hymn sheet here. So if all the dice roll ones, that means everybody's workers are going to be rubbish, not just yours. And I love the fact that you can build some amazing engines in this game. As you're, you know, placing these card rows down, and there's a certain worker placement spot which you can use and will trigger all the cards that you've built in that row, depending on the pit values you place there. So much room for improving your engine. Just, it feels so good to do everything in this one. A very tight game, and I just love everything about it. You know, everything feels good. So that is Lorenzo Il Magnifico at number 4. At number 3, I have Barrage. Now, Barrage is another pretty involved game, but not so much in terms of its rules overhead, more so in terms of the consequences to your actions with this one, because everything you do matters in this game, and you have to be very careful about, you know, decisions you make early in the game not haunting you later. But this game is a very logical one, as you are trying to capture water running down this mountain in these dams that you build, and then convert that water into energy by running it through these conduits and spitting it out these power stations. All the aim of creating energy will essentially convert into points. But I love the way that, you know, earlier in the game, building power stations on the bottom level is relatively affordable, but you can be a bit of a snake in this one and build these dams further up the mountain, meaning that you will grab that water before it gets to the other players. So it's always a game about trying to kind of cut the head off the snake and trying to get there before the other players do. So you have to be very much on the ball here. You have to be constantly engaged and not let other people take your opportunities. But the game is held together very well through the worker placement system in this one. You know, the game, I think all the mechanisms get out the way of the game, because you are always going to be looking at the board, constantly assessing where the opportunities are going to come up, and where's the water going to come down next, where's going to be the best place for me to build my dams and conduits. It is just an absolutely genius design. Again, so logical in the way it's put together, pretty thematic as well, and you can explain things linking back to those thematic ties. I think it is just an amazing game, and I think it gets a bit of a bad rep at times by being, you know, really nasty. You know, I'm not a huge fan of confrontational, nasty style games, but this one, yes, you can cut other people off, but you are doing it to help yourself, not so much to hurt the other players. So again, it's not as nasty as I think a lot of people make it out to be. But what a brilliant design. I was mind blown when I played this the first time. Every time I played it since, I just love it just as much. So that is Barrage at number 3. At number 2, I have Trajan, which is the final game by Stefenfeld on my top 100. Definitely been the most frequent designer here. But this is a series of mini games. All the mini games are pretty simple in their own right, such as going on this little conquest with your little soldiers and legionnaires. You are trying to collect these tiles to feed the needs of the people or risk losing negative points. You're climbing tracks to get endgame scoring tiles as well. And lots of different things like that, simple stuff. But I love the way it is all held together on your player board through this Mancala system, as all the actions are assigned to a different bowl. At the start of the game, you're going to distribute down these little tokens on your player board. And to take an action, all you're going to do is you're going to select a bunch of these tokens from a bowl and deposit them as you go one at a time. And the action you land on is the action you take. But you also have to consider the colours of these tokens in the bowls, because they can trigger other action tiles and bonus tiles as well. So very puzzly in its nature. You can do tons of planning and strategic moves in this game, and it's just such a cool point salad. But that mechanism itself, that Mancala, is the best I've ever seen a Mancala used before. The game is genius, and I just absolutely adore it. That is Trajan at number 2. And finally, at number 1, my favourite board game of all time is El Grande. So El Grande is considered to be the textbook, the benchmark, the grandfather of all area majority games. Of course, I agree with that. This is my number 1 board game of all time. But considering this is 30 years old now, or approaching 30 years old, and how many games of this genre come out each year, and this is still the best one, it goes to show how great this game is. And I think a big part of that is due to the purity of the design. There's definitely nothing here that convolutes the rules. It's pretty straightforward, but it's genius in the way it works, because you have this kind of 2 card system going on here, where one deck of cards is going to be your initiative, where you're going to have a deck of cards which is numbered from, I think it's like 1 to 13 or something. The higher numbers are going to give you priority in drafting the action cards that you need in order to manipulate the board state. But these action cards come with a caveat where the higher the initiative is great because you get the action card you want, but it means you don't get to add any meeples from your common supply into your personal supply. So you need to constantly know when to sit back and let other players take priority of the cards so that you can restock your supply of meeples to deploy onto the board, because they can run out pretty quickly if you're not careful. I also love this additional restriction of only being able to deploy in adjacent regions to where the Grande currently is. So you can really manipulate that or utilize that to your benefit by controlling one region's or one area of the map down here, moving the Grande to the other region, and let other people compete over that, knowing that yours is safe because nobody can go there. And it also has this cool mechanism where you can choose to put meeples in this castle or the Castillo rather than deploy them immediately onto the board, which is another way you can gain points by having majorities. But you'll then go into this kind of blind bidding system and choose to deploy them simultaneously as anybody else in that Castillo, which can potentially mess with who's controlling what region. It's just a brilliantly put together game. It's one of those games where if you added anything, it would make the game worse. If you took away anything, it would make the games worse. And for me, those perfectly engineered games are the ones that really do hold up and stand the test of time. And 30 years old, still the best. El Grande, just a brilliantly put together game. I can't give it enough praise. It's my number 1. I've played nearly 1,000 games now, and none of them are as good as El Grande. So there we have it. That is the conclusion of my top 100 board games of all time. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video and the entire series. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel. Also, please do let me know what are your favourite 10 games of all time, because I'd love to hear that. For everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.